Today we're talking about some chord substitutions that we can use instead of just playing seventh chords, for instance, in a B-flat blues, which is what we're looking at. Today we're going to look at a sixth chord as well as a voicing of a ninth chord that you can use to supplement that sixth, and I'll show you the sense of that in a second here. Let's talk about what a sixth chord is. A sixth chord is spelled root 3. You could add the 5 and then 6, but in this case the 5 gets in the way of that 6, so I'll just take out the 5, eliminate the 5. This is a sixth chord. Here's my root, or here. Now, what I was talking about at the top is we can take that sixth chord and move it down a tone, and we now have a seventh below here, and a ninth here, and a fifth here. So this sixth chord becomes a voicing of a ninth by just moving it down 2 frets. Now, what that sounds like with a track, for instance, is like this. So here's the 6. Okay, I'm sure you've heard the chord before many times, and it's really useful. It's a nice sound. It's a little different than the seventh. And as far as the seventh chord goes, I find it helpful when I think of chords that are sort of foundational and put them in their places, so I can think of the chord alterations against this larger chord. Okay, now let's think of the E-flat 7. We could do this or this E-flat 7, and I'm going to do the same thing. Root 3, skip the 5, and play a 6. And the same thing will apply. I can take this down a tone and it becomes a voicing of a ninth. And of course I can do the same thing with the F7 and back to the E and to the B flat. Now, if we listen to that against the track, you'll get the idea. There's lots of fun stuff that you can do with this idea. Change. And so on, right? You can tell that the sixth is a little bit of a different sound than, for instance, the 13 would be. The 13 would have a seventh in it. So if you add, let's take the seventh here, for instance. Here's my root. Here's the flat 7. Here's the 3, and here's my what was a sixth. But because I'm playing a seventh now, we call it a 13. So the 13 is a little bit more complex, if you will, and that that works just fine. But it doesn't work so well if you try to move that one. This one sort of does that really cool little chord alteration. The sixth does when you move it down a tone. But the 13 is a lovely chord sound and very very effective. Okay. Now this you can play with the 13 as well. The E flats. This is a nice voicing of a 13. And the same thing would apply here. So there's that 13 up on top. Here we have a 9. There's my 13 on top. And here we have the 13 in this B flat position. Okay, so let's just add the 13s to the 6ths and some of the movement that we were using before. With that 9, 13. You can just add just 7ths and 7th and 7th. 7th, 7th, add the 13, nine with the 7th down here, right? 13, 13 and 9, 13, 7th, and so on. Okay, so that may give you some new ideas, some new chordal ideas that you can use in a blues tune, but they also apply in other tunes that you will likely play. And these short chord ideas are especially handy when you start to build single note lines. So when I look at a 1, a 3, and a 6, those I know that the color here of a 6th is a lovely color, and so I can place that really nice color as a single note against a track, right? So the 6. Here. You get the idea. What we're trying to do is actually not have a large separation between the chords that you play and the single note lines that you play. We're trying to get away from this idea of chord pictures and be able to spell the chords that you are using and use the sounds of if I'm spelling a B flat 6, I know that this is a root, this is my 3, and this is my color. And when I use a color like that against a chord progression other people playing, it sounds far more interesting because I'm implying notes of the chord, the color notes of the chord. Again, the same thing would apply for a 3 too, although it's not as colorful. Right? It is an interesting note, and it can be like a blue note when I use the flat 3, and to the major 3, and the same thing will hold true for the 7th. The 7th is a very colorful sound, and that's the way you should think of chords. Each of these chords is made up of notes that create a very individual chord sound. And there are colored tones like the 13 and the 9, and then there are those foundational tones like the 3 and the 7. If you start to define those in your soloing and in your chord playing, and you understand how the chords are spelled and so on, then that separation between chord and single note line starts to disappear, and so you can use single notes to define a chord. You can use double stops. You can use three notes, four notes, and so on, right? And you're aware of how to spell those chords. That you can learn a lot in playing blues, and so this is trying to get away from just playing a pentatonic scale or two pentatonic scales and listening really hard. You always have to listen real hard, but stepping into that place where you can define the chord and spell new sounds. Use the sixth in conjunction with the basic triad sound, or use the 13, which is the same thing, an octave higher, with that flat seven sound, and you'll find some really nice new colors and new ideas that you can use not only in your rhythm playing, but also in your chord playing, chord thinking, I should say, in your single note line thinking, which becomes chordal thinking. You're thinking through the progression, and you're defining notes that you think sound good, whether they be the foundational notes of the chord or whether they be color tones in the chord, like, as I said before, the 13 or the 9. If this video was helpful to you, like, subscribe. It helps the algorithm immensely. Buy me a coffee. Buy one of my books, which you can get on Amazon. And please leave a question. I get back to all the questions with fairly lengthy answers. So thanks for stopping by. Thanks for your support, and we'll see you real soon.